Hey everyone, welcome to Race Trace. In this video, I'll take you through what you can do with it, all of its features, and how I think you can use it to help you enjoy modern F1. We start with the championship mode. So we have data back from the 2023 championship through to 2026, but today we're just going to focus on 2026. For each session, we can look at all the data, all of the telemetry, all of the statistics, and everything that came out of that particular session. Let's start by taking a look at the Japanese qualifying session from 2026, just to take a look at some of the features. So we can see a summary of the session, who was fastest and where they were fastest. We can also delve deeper into the timing and the sectors, looking at the fastest lap and theoretical best analysis. So again, here we can see that Antonelli was the fastest ahead of George Russell. We can also take a look at the session log. So this is messages coming straight from race control, summarized for us to see here. We can also take a look at the telemetry. So let's take a look at, I think, Hamilton's fastest lap in this section. On this dialogue, we can see the lap time, the sectors, the intermediates, the min, the max, the speed trap, some estimates of the throttle and brake percentage, the max RPM, top gear, and an estimated energy recovered. We can look at the track map. We can see the way the driver is driving the circuit from different perspectives. So we can look at it from the speed. We can look at it from the throttle. We can look at it from the brake, understand where the braking zones are. Not an awful lot of braking zones at Suzuka. We can also see the gear, and we can estimate the engine mode. So this is a feature that's unique to Racetrace. This is something that I've developed myself as a response to, or to at least try and understand the new engine modes for 2026. Based on the throttle application, the speed and the acceleration, we can try to figure out whether or not they're coasting, whether they're harvesting, deploying, or if they're super clipping. In race mode, we might even be able to tell if they're using the override mode as well. So moving on to data analysis, we can see the speed trace over time. We can analyze it from different perspectives. We can look at it from the time on the lap. We can look at it on the session clock. We can look at it based on an estimate of track position and also based on speed displacement. Also, we try to estimate some sort of state of charge of the battery as well as the driving modes from before. The state of charge mode, again, it's deploying, it's super clipping, it's harvesting, or it's coasting. And the battery state of charge is an estimate, again, based on physics. This is proprietary to Racetrace, but it is still just an estimate. We can also look at throttle over brake, and also we can look at gear. These all feed into the telemetry map that we showed earlier. It's possible to compare the lap times of two different drivers. If we do that, we don't have access to the driving and the engine modes here as before. We just see the outline of the map, but we can see who's fastest in which sector, what their relative speeds are, again, who's winning that particular battle. And we can look at the comparison of the speed traces over time. So again, with this, it's probably better to align it on the clock time or the lap time. But we can also look at the speed displacement to try and get some slightly different understanding of what's going on. We can compare the estimated battery state of charge, although you only see the engine mode for the first driver. And we can compare throttle over brake and gear as well. We also get a distance over time displacement. If we move on to the race, we get even more details about how the race unfolded. We can start with the race summary, the session summary, which tells us who won, where they started, and various elements about the race as it unfolded. We can go into more detail looking at the timing and the sectors, again comparing in the same way that we did in qualifying the theoretical and also the fastest overall sectors. We can also look at the distribution of lap times. So here we can see a box and whisker plot of each driver ordered by where they finished the race, with their median lap time in the middle and the distribution of lap times shown via the spread. The box covers the first and third quartile, and the line shows the median. As you can see, as drivers finish later, their median time decreases over time, which is largely expected, with the exception of Albon, who didn't finish the race. We can see the tail of the race. We can see the drivers' positions over time, over the laps. We can also track the gap to the leader for the selected drivers. There's a table of position changes comparing people where they started to where they finished, and there's an overtake log where we can see who overtook who and where. We can also delve into the session log, which is the race control messages, where there were 49 in this instance. I'm going to move over to the Miami race now for some examples of telemetry. So we can look at an overtake. For example, I'm going to look at Norris versus Antonelli on lap 6. We can see the 2 lap times, and we see the relative positions. From this one, it's probably more informative to look at it on the session clock. We can see the difference in speeds, how the two drivers are achieving their different lap times, as well as the relative state of charge and the differences in throttle and brake application. You can stack the data for up to 4 different drivers when you want to compare a more interesting battle. For example, Norris versus Leclerc versus Antonelli on lap 13. You can see the clear differentiation between the drivers' approaches and what they have access to with their cars and with the strategy modes. With the race strategy analysis section, we have access to the tyre strategies, the tyre timings, any safety cars, as well as the drivers' gaps to the leader and their relative positions to the leader. We can also start to predict the lap times actual versus predicted, and we can go some way to estimate the track conditions and tyre degradation by stint. We can get a clearer picture when we go to the stint analysis mode, and we can compare Antonelli. We only have information for the second stint, so let's have Antonelli versus Leclerc. So we can see when we adjust the fuel corrected lap time, there is a difference in the two drivers, with Leclerc's times decreasing over the stint and Antonelli's increasing, again correcting for fuel. We can look at the lap time distributions of the two drivers, and whilst we can see that Antonelli is faster and has a much tighter distribution of lap times over this particular stint. We can also look at the tail of the championship, both the drivers and the constructors, as the season progresses. This has been an introduction to the Racetrace platform, where I've shown the features and the analysis that you can do. Hopefully you will choose to subscribe to the platform, and I'll see you at the next race.